after looking at things, it seemed like Danny O'Connor, who I seen fight before, when he was actually over on PBC, and they was building him up. He had got knocked out by a fighter by the name of Gabriel Tito Bracero. This is Danny O'Connor yesterday. He was supposed to fight he was supposed to fight Jose Ramirez, 140-pound WBC champion today. Right now it's 10:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, July the 7th, 2018. I'm TstreeT Controversy. This is TstreeT Controversy Live. Severe dehydration trying to make weight, which has become a really big issue in boxing because, for one, in this day and age with modern technology and medicine and supplements, whether they're banned or not, fighters are cutting weight a lot closer to fights instead of gradually dropping the weight. So in the case of Danny O'Connor right here, from what I've seen, going to just taking a little gander, at his box rec. In fact, let's go full screen, third screen. 30-3 with 11 KOs, 33-year-old southpaw. Now, look what you see here. His last two fights have been at 100 and the 40-pound limit. But when he was at 147, he just wasn't doing too well, in regards to split decision loss to Vivian Harris, knocked out in the first round by Gabriel Bracero. Then he comes back and he has a split decision and a majority decision. So even though he's winning, he feels, well, wait a minute, for my next fight, let's see if we can get to 140 and start making our way down there. Because at that point in time, when he moves to the 140-pound division, Terrence Crawford's belts are vacated. You see? 147, you have guys like Errol Spence. You have guys like Denny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, and the list goes on. So I think as a business move, just my personal opinion, he probably figured, well, listen, let's go try our hand at 140. And even he says right here, let me read it to you. Reading Rainbow. Heartbreaking to be rushed to the hospital and deemed medically unfit to fight the day before fighting for my first world title. I let the idea of being a world champion cloud my judgment of my personal health. Nothing is more important than my health. Trust me, bro, I had to learn the hard way. 3-week coma early this year myself, working on getting boxing promotions going and getting copyrighted by Top Rank. But anyway, moving on over to this screen. Not this one. This one. Let's go here. I want to read something to you. This is from ESPN, Dane Rayfield, and this was from his team. Zoom in a little bit more. There we go. O'Connor, 30-0, 11 KOs, 33-year-old southpaw from Framingham, Massachusetts, was preparing for his first world title fight and looked healthy and spoke well at the final news conference Thursday. But Joe DeGuardia of Star Boxing, DeGuardia, I forgot, they're kind of linked in a way, said it was a different story Friday morning. He was shaking off the last 2 pounds, which you really don't want to be losing 2 pounds a day before a fight. But anyway. He was shaking off the last 2 pounds, and he was in a sauna, and he couldn't shake them, he said. His body just gave way. He was out of it. At that point, he had an ESPN interview scheduled with the broadcast for 11:30 a.m., and his managers requested not to do the interview and to just go to the weigh-in. I thought it was just a regular losing weight thing, but then I went to his room and saw him and said, you can't do this. You need an IV. You need fluids. He wasn't talking. He was incoherent. He was in bad shape. Moving on. When I saw him in the room, I told his manager, you have to get him fluids. There's no more making weight, DeGuardia said. He was in no shape to fight. After a couple of IV bags, he still wasn't coherent. The doctor said, you can't leave the hospital. We're checking you in. He was great on Thursday, but the last 2 pounds weren't coming off, and he was trying to basically kill himself to make that weight, obviously. You have guys like Jeff Horn, who's been known his last few fights to be heavily rumored to be dropping 10 plus pounds during fight week. Look at Brandon Rios. It's a common thing, and I guess there won't be any reform really until somebody dies, unfortunately. But right now we're too advanced we're too advanced to have so many fighters fighting so far off from where they should be fighting. For example, I think this is logical. I think that, a fighter should fight anywhere around 10 pounds around his weight division, right? Let's say, 15 pounds, being generous. Let's say if he wants to indulge. I think 15 pounds is too much. Let's say if he wants to indulge, between fights, he likes to, eat a whole bunch of fucking steak and fucking chitlins and shit. Fucking go down like fucking Nicholas Walters, former 126-pound champion. Go down vacation to Jamaica, eat a whole bunch of oxtails and curry goat. Shit is good. But what can they really do to regulate, I guess? Like, for example, the WBC has 30-day weigh-ins. Can they do something to say, well, listen, if you're not within this amount within 30, and all the organizations have to do this. In fact, the state athletic commissions who override the sanctioning bodies, WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, should be like, hey, listen, you got to come in here for this 30-day weigh-in. And if you're not 10 pounds near your weight, and then if we check you again, a couple of weeks later and you still ain't been dropping no weight, then we're going to call the fight off. You see what I'm saying? VADA, in fact, has been really on about this for the last few years. This is their social media right here. The problematic weight cutting. This is them retweeting other doctors and stuff. I'm gonna read this to you. Reading Rainbow. Anyway, the problematic weight cutting, dehydration, rehydration issues, as well as overzealous sparring, can and need to be addressed to improve both short-term and long-term risk to the brain. But regardless, I'm still going to be watching the here, let me go pull up the card for you. I'm still going to be watching the card nonetheless. Of course, I'm going to be watching UFC 2. It's a shame because Jose Ramirez, it really would have been nice to see him in the World Boxing. Damn, that shit is bright. It really would have been nice to see him in the World Boxing Super Series tournament, which has guys like Regis Prograis, who's fighting on ESPN next week. Well, Regis Prograis, if he wins against Juan Velasco next week, you have Josh Taylor, who's going to be in a tournament. Maurice Hooker's not. Maybe we can get a Jose Ramirez versus a Maurice Hooker going, because since both of those guys are not going to be in a tournament, or at least it's almost confirmed that he's not going to be in the tournament, meaning Maurice Hooker, new WBO 140-pound champion. Maybe they can get, a fight going. But I can understand why Top Rank hasn't put him in the World Boxing Super Series, because he will be a part of that World Boxing Super Series broadcasting package. And ESPN is not going to just show his fights and not show the other World Boxing Super Series fights. So basically, ESPN, with all the dates that they have, and they're kind of a little low on fighters. They're trying to build these guys up. That's why you have them fighting so much. I love that ESPN Top Rank fighters are so active, fighting every, 4 months. They get in about 3, so far looking like a pace of about 3 fights a year, even if they are champion. So they don't have, the fighters to be given out, to other networks, not right now. Showtime is still trying to keep all their fighters in-house, but they have so many of them. It's hard to keep all those fighters active. Whereas at Top Rank, they've been trying to get so many other fighters from other promotions, guys like David Benavidez. They reached out to Adrian Broner in the past. I forgot other names that they reached out to for when they signed with ESPN. But the point is, they wasn't going to let Jose Ramirez go because they need Jose Ramirez on ESPN, and ESPN is basically his network. Not his network in a sense of he got like Mayweather control, but you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. So if they can put him together versus Maurice Hooker next, then that can buy some time until maybe he can fight Regis Prograis next year. Because I think that's supposed to be the plan for him to fight Regis Prograis next year. And also, there seems to be a little bit of beef brewing with Alex Osita, who fought last week. Right now, remember, it's the day before the fight. Well, the day of the fight. It's January 7th, 10:30 a.m. The card doesn't start till about 6 p.m. You know, and the main event will be about 10 p.m. or so, something like that. But he said he would step in, you know, but he just fought last week. And I'm surprised, you know, that he even thought he was going to be approved to fight. But, you know, whatever. You know, he's got a little bit of beef there. In regards to guys like Adrian Broner, I don't really, you know. Remember, we got to think that he's only going to fight guys that are available on ESPN right now, or they can get over there. He's in the World Boxing Super Series. These two guys are going to be in the World Boxing Super Series. We don't know what's going on with him. You know, he can likely be ordered to be the mandatory for Maurice Hooker unless he wants to go this route. But either way, Bob Arum is going to, you know, is going to dictate this because they won't order him to be the mandatory unless Bob Arum basically approves it. That's how it is with the WBO, Bob Arum, and even Frank Warren too. So with a good portion of with a good portion of these fighters in the World Boxing Super Series tournament, or the good enough names, you got other names that are with other networks, then the fights can't be made. Guys like Sergey Limpinets, who wanted to be in the World Boxing Super Series, but for whatever reason, he's saying they didn't want him because of promotion or whatever. You know, he said, she said. You know, and the names are not really really caliber names that he can fight that don't involve any promotional shit. But anyway, I'm TstreeT Controversy. This is TstreeT Controversy Live. Please subscribe. All links to my social media are right down below in the description box. Please subscribe.